And welcome to another episode of the MatStats Show, along with Kevin Hazard and Glenn Gormley. I'm Jason Bryant, and we begin a three-part series today in the wonderful world of college athletics. But before we get to the wonderful world of house versus NIL, not NLI, which is now gone, a lot of things out there. The news changes almost hourly on this. So before we get into the deep dive on the finances of college sports today, which again, Glenn being our resident actual statistician, not just a guy who likes numbers. I like numbers. I'm not an actual statistician. That guy, actual statistician. So Glenn's going to dig into this. And again, this is going to be a first of a three-part series. We're not calling it a three-part show, Glenn. I had to pivot on your terminology. This is a series. This is like you go to church and you've got a 3, 6, 15-part sermon series. It's kind of like that. This is a series. Okay. It may be sermon-esque. I'm just going to warn you first of all, because there's going to be some fire. There's going to be some hellfire and brimstone here being thrown about in the college sports world. Before we get to it, we got NWCA convention coming up as we record this on July 28th. This will be our July episode for MatStats Show. I'm heading out for, we start with the board meeting on that Thursday. We've got the Coaches Leadership Academy that goes on. And Glenn, Kevin, I want to touch to you guys a little bit before we get into the show topic about the value of the NWCA convention. This is an NWCA show, so of course we're associated with it. This was my first, on the job, move to Pennsylvania, go to the convention. It was in Buffalo, my first year on the job back in 2005. So we're coming up on my 20-year anniversary of my first convention. And a lot of things have changed in the worlds of college sports. But Glenn, start with you and what you've seen from a former college coach standpoint to being involved with the NWCA, the value of the NWCA convention, not just to the college world, but to the sport of wrestling in general.
Sure, Jason. Thanks for asking that. When I was a coach, it was way back when in the 80s. We didn't even know there was an NWCA at William & Mary, let alone think about going to a convention if there was one. Now I look at it as a can't-miss weekend or week, whatever you want to call it, for the sport. I think Moyers and the staff, Dan Weaver puts this all together as a young kid, Dr. Paquette, you know, Stephanie, they all do such a good job there. Nate Nas, I don't want to miss anybody naming everybody, but it's really something that's really great for the sport. And I'm happy to be driving down there on Wednesday and being there for 4 or 5 days. I think it's a can't miss thing.
Kevin, you're going to have to be in a car with this guy for that long drive. I mean, you're looking forward to the convention, but
just from the airport. He's picking me up in Jacksonville.
Okay. All right. So, okay. And it's at, Sawgrass Marriott too. So if you're into hitting the sticks and, replacing your divots, it's also got that for you.
But talking about that, I think it's really important. I think you get coaches from some of the smaller schools. They get to talk to some of the coaches from bigger schools. I think there's a lot of ideas shared, and I agree with Glenn. It's gotten much more important, and I think the NWCA has kind of knit the college wrestling community together. And this weekend is just a time for a lot of ideas to be shared, and we're going to learn a lot about what we're talking about because we're going to get some opinions from some of the big coaches and find out what they feel about this and what it's going to mean to wrestling and just college sports in general.
And one thing that comes up every year, I mean, this is where, and I point to this, I think it was the convention in Tahoe, which, believe it or not, I actually found my old luggage tag from the convention. I want to say it was 2007. And I remember the NCAA sitting in that Division I meeting, the general membership meeting for Division I, talking about the qualifier system and telling the wrestling coaches, if you don't figure it out, we're going to figure it out for you. And the options on the table, people were talking about regionalization, going to regions and things of that nature. I remember coaches had printouts of things that I had written on Internet about the quality qualifiers that didn't make it based on the old qualification system. And they all had these ideas. And then when that happens, and then I remember Tom Ryan spoke up. He goes, why can't we use current year data? Because the NCAA was moving away from historical data. You don't see it used anymore. There's the chance, during COVID, I think they had to use the historical data for the 1 year. But we look at now it's using current year data. You can take all the shots you want at the qualification system as it is. It's still light years better We've got the best 330 going every year. We're not leaving guys that had one bad day home typically. Now, that still happens, but it's few and far between compared to leaving 20 good guys at home versus leaving 2, which is where we're at now. And I just remember that meeting, like a lot got done there. And I'm like, that's one of the first times I sat down. I said, man, something got done, like changed the sport in terms of how it was even just conducted. And it was something I just remember that got the coaches really churning. Well, what about this? What about this? And then we did a practice year. And then a year later, that 08-09 season is boom, it's in practice. It's being used. And now here we are, 15, 16 years later that it's the way. Now, of course, we know that all, wrestling coaches love to find rules and exploit them because that's just, you got to find that advantage. I think every coach does that in every sport. It's not just wrestling coaches, but again, a lot of good has come out of it. Again, it's the opportunity to hear and put things together. There are leadership divisions. There's leadership groups. There's breakout divisions. So what concerns the NAI coaches is not necessarily what's on the mind of the Division I coaches. And now we see that a lot more with the split even within Division I, where our topic today, or part of our topic today, is the NIL, the house, the settlement, the opting in, the revenue sharing, all of that. Half of Division, not even half, probably less than half of Division I is at these Power 4 programs compared to the mid-majors. And there's uneven playing fields and such. So we'll get to hear a lot of that now that the House has come, that settlement has been passed come July 1. So, Glenn, we're going to jump right in. And folks, like I said, sermon-ass, strap in, a lot of numbers. So let's start with what we've got. And we go back to a throwback. You said the 80s. We're going to hit 88 miles an hour. We're going to hit the car that opens up like the wings. My friend Philip Hansen's grandfather had a DeLorean in my neighborhood in Newport News growing up. So I saw these things. It wasn't just Marty McFly and Doc Brown, which was a weird relationship between some really old dude and a high school kid, but we won't go there. We're talking about the DeLoreans, and we're talking about, clearly you can see, Glenn, what's the impetus behind today's theme?
Okay, the title is On a Clear Day, You Can See College Athletics. The reason that the picture there from Back to the Future with the DeLorean, this was a famous book that came out a little bit before I was in MBA school. It was called On a Clear Day, You Can See General Motors. It was basically saying that everyone thinks everything's good with General Motors. Back in those days, they led the revenue every year for the Fortune 500. Now they're nowhere near the top. But they weren't making money and they ran into trouble. So I changed that to On a Clear Day, You Can See College Athletics. This is a 3-part series, as Jason said, where MatStats does a business study using statistics and financial data to help the viewers understand the drastic changes in college sports. It is really confusing right now. It is tough to understand the business of college sports in 2025. MatStats on today's show explores the revenues, the expenses, and the profits or losses of college athletic departments. In part 2 and 3, we will dive into conference realignment, rev share, NIL, roster limitations, U.S. Congress getting involved, potential LLCs, Title IX lawsuits, yada, yada, yada.
So the stuff that'll make your head explode.
Yes. And the basic reason for this whole show is we need to make sure we make college wrestling sustainable and have a workable game plan, because this is all coming, guys. Okay. We're going to see a lot of changes and we got to be ready for them. Okay. On slide number 2, it's in this episode. If you're looking at it at home or something like that or want to review it, you can go back and see what slide every episode starts, every topic starts on. Okay.
And once
next.
again, show notes available mattalkonline.com and on NWCAonline.com, where if you're listening in your car and you're not driving, well, again, we suggest you not looking at the show notes and slides as you're driving. So again, fair warning, but if you're not watching the video, you need a video accompaniment. The slideshow is available in a PDF form that you can go through. So when you hear Glenn talk about the slides, that's what we're talking about. So right now, as you start episode 45-2, that's where we're at. The old PowerPoint style. So this is also very, very college. I guess what's the word? Well, lecture-esque as well. So we continue on. Remember, show notes, mattalkonline.com, NWCAonline.com.
Okay. Now, the MatStats show is here to create a library of statistical analysis. Moyer asked the three of us to do this, and that's why we're here, guys, to help the NWCA have a library for stuff that people can go back and look at in the past. It's not like you only have to watch this once we release this show. You can go back onto our website and watch it anytime you wish. Okay. The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect any policies or opinions of the NWCA, nor do Gormley, Bryant, and Hazard always agree with each other all the time. Okay.
And insert without the express written consent of Major League Baseball while we're at it.
Yes. Since I have an old school Philadelphia A's hat on, we need to add that in there. Okay.
Yeah, didn't you get that at the stadium? You got that, didn't you? You got that in person. That's
Yes,
how
I
old
did.
you are.
Yes, I did. I got it when the Philadelphia A's were playing. That was a good one. That was
At least
a good
you
one.
still have
They
your
were
hat.
actually gone.
1937.
They were actually gone before I was born, but there was one guy on this show who was alive when the A's were still in Philly. Okay. Yep. Okay.
That guy.
So,
With the white
MatStats is a show based on numbers. It's not opinions. We draw our opinions based on stats we show. Now, each month on our monthly podcast, we tell you something different about a number of teams going on right now. This is an interesting little thing, guys, right now. As of July 15th, 2025, there were 38 NCAA Division II schools that have a women's team. In 2002 and 2003, there were 38 men's NCAA Division II wrestling teams. It's now up to the record 75 from the low point of 38 that year. But this is really showing where wrestling is growing. We're growing as a sport, not just one sex or the other sex, but as a sport. We're one sport, guys. We just have two sexes. Okay.
All right. So we've been talking about this for a number of months, and I just thought you'd like to give an explanation of how we got into the end of July from June and putting this show out.
Well, sure, Kevin. There's two main reasons. Number one, the colleges, to get their financial data, they don't use a calendar year, they use a fiscal year. Almost all of them end June 30th and start July 1st. And also, as Jason referenced earlier in the show, the House settlement was finally decided. So we needed more time to do all this. And it was something so different for the three of us. We had to do a lot of research on a topic that we're not familiar with. I mean, we might be familiar with, who won the wrestling tournament this year, okay, but we're not necessarily familiar with all the legal thing that went around. So that's what took us so long. And hats off to the Knight Newhouse for getting so much work done in a short period of time, putting all these schools' financials up. I was very impressed that they did that quickly.
All right. So this is our episode 45, and we already talked about why you named it what you did, but how about we just do a quick preview on the new topic for this episode?
Certainly. Okay. This topic, okay, I already talked about and there was DeLorean that took all the notes on that, and that's why I picked the DeLorean car there. So we already did that. But the topic on this show, as you see on slide 11, okay, is the financial future of college athletics. Okay, college sports seems to be in the glory years right now, if you just turn on TV and watch it. Okay, but MatStats looks at the revenues, expenses, and profits or losses across NCAA Division I athletic departments. And how does this affect college sports in general and wrestling specifically? Okay. Now, part 2 and 3 of this topic will deal with, as I said earlier, rev share, NIL, roster caps, conference realignments, LLCs, yada, yada, yada. Okay. And at the end of part 3, we will sit down and say, this is where we think we are, and we need to do something about it, because all of us on this show are old enough to remember college wrestling going downhill until Moyer and a lot of other people helped for the raise we see now. Okay. The methodology on this show, I like to explain this every show so people where we know we got this stuff. Most of the rev share and NIL stats used in this episode were compiled by Patrick O'Rourke. He's a CPA from Washington, D.C., so he speaks my language. Pat went to Washington State, summa cum laude graduate, whose accounting firm services business and nonprofit organizations, which colleges are. The NCAA Division I college profit and loss data comes from the Knight Newhouse College Athletic Database. By all means, go onto his website and find out, if you need to, more about it. But the Knight Commission has been around for a while and has really helped, shine some light on college athletics. Okay. Slide 15.
All right, so we did a lot of data, and it's great that MatStat had the help of O'Rourke on our night research. Where do we take this data, and what did we do with it?
Okay. Like Kevin just said there, MatStats uses this data from the Knight Newhouse thing. We let the attorneys argue their legal case for extremely large fees, and their agents on the NIL deal with that, and Deloitte doing the NIL stuff. We let those guys handle that. Okay. They have their role in sports, but we are here to explain the business of it to you. Okay. I don't think you're going to see that much on TV, media, legal things about what the business really is. As you see on slide 17, colleges are non-profit entities and tend not to have profits and large reserve funds. Okay. They are driven by education and not profit. Okay. And believe me, we have a couple guys from William Mary here, and they pound that into the education.
And then everybody, all the sports fans who watch and gamble and do everything on Saturdays, they're sitting there chuckling, going, yeah, okay. The whole concept of that mantra, driven by education, nonprofit. It's such a contradiction so many times when we see all these, getting close to $1 billion revenue deal, like, multimedia contracts and stuff. So it's one of those things like, let's use air quotes for some of these terms, even though that is in their mission statements. It's just, it's some of those things. They're just contradictory, which Glenn will get to some great contradictions later in the show. By the way.
Like the NFL is a non-profit with quotes up. How is that possible? Okay, so there are special tax laws for non-profits. The departments really basically have to spend their whole budget. Okay, close to the whole budget anyway. They can have smaller reserves set aside. All right. Private schools do not disclose their financial data to the public. So the numbers you hear here are from the public schools in the NCAA Division I. For example, Notre Dame is a private school. We do not have the numbers for them. I'm sure the NCAA does, but that's different. This is a show that we could get the public numbers from. Okay. One thing, I have a feeling I'm not in business school anymore when I was going over this. I know I sound like the Wizard of Oz there. One thing that really jumped out at me right away is when you look at the Knight Newhouse's hard work, okay, they list expenses first, then revenues, and there are no profit columns. Okay. That to me,
not a normal P&L statement.
That's not a normal thing whatsoever. And a lot of times when you talk to colleges, they talk about, well, we spend this much and we have this many scholarships. Okay.
They love the term revenue, and it's one thing that drives me just crazy. Revenue sport. Well, you're bringing in revenue. Just again, being a nonprofit, but the thing is, people are like, well, we're a revenue sport. Yeah, well, every sport, first of all, can be a revenue sport if they put a little effort behind it. That's another thing. I hate the term non-revenue. And then one thing to consider is the the Joe Blow college football fan that will take shots at swimming and wrestling and track and field and soccer and in some parts of the world baseball, because in the SEC we know baseball is a money driver, especially with how much they spend and whatnot. But it's like Well, revenue. Let's not confuse revenue and profit. Glenn's about to say that, well, there are no actual profits, but let's just say when you're spending more than you bring in, yeah.
That's a
Business
problem.
Glenn, take back over.
Okay, I'll give you a big thing on a little anecdote on this. When they were in the process of dropping William and Mary, the athletic director was telling me that we're not a revenue sport. I said, John, we're the most profitable team here because we lose the least amount of money. Okay, we were the most profitable team at William and Mary. Okay, they didn't take my my little quote as being very humorous. Okay, slide 20.
All right, so you were able to look at the current and past profit losses in a lot of the D1 preparation. How about we start with just a basic overview of this past year's profit losses in the NCAA D1 athletic departments?
Okay, certainly. Kevin, I would be remiss if I didn't start this with GAAP versus crap. GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles. That is used by accountants and people that, know something about accounting, understand what that's going on. College athletic departments are notorious for not strictly following GAAP. Okay. I got this quote from Andy Adebanajo, a former wrestler at William and Mary. It's crap. Cleverly rigged accounting principles. Okay.
Or
So,
practices, yes.
yeah, practices. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So, what this is here is when I was looking through this, I looked through the NCAA members' financial reporting statement. Okay. There's this mysterious entry on line 50 that they refer to as excess transfers back. Okay. So it took me a while to find this out. I called my accounting professor from the 80s on this topic. Okay. He's a big donor to William Mary Track. I called a couple old assistant ADs and athletic directors. They had no idea what was going on with this. Okay. It turns out that they were basically an exact match, okay, for student fees and institutional support. So when you look at Knight Newhouse at their profit loss statement, the losses, I should say, are much bigger losses than they should be. Okay. So that's why I'm pointing this out to people. In the future, after we get to slide 24 here, which I'll show you, okay, we remove line 50, and I'll show you what it means there. Okay. On slide 24, okay, the first row is institutional support, then the next one is student fees. In the red is the excess students transfers back. On FCS and no football, it matches identically. On FBS, it's just off by a very small number. Some athletic directors, assistant athletic director, probably made a clerical mistake, is why that happened like that. Okay. So when you get to it.
So basically what's happening, they have it in as revenue, and to make the losses look worse for whatever reason, they add it back as an expense.
Yeah, yeah. I think, Kevin,
Weird.
to make it look like we're spending this much money, it's hogwash. Okay. I hope to bump into somebody from the NCAA at the convention that might know something about this. I'd love to talk to them. Okay, slide 25. There's 237 public NCAA Division I schools. They lost a grand total of $241.7 million. Okay. If you include line 50, that would be an almost $4.5 billion loss. Okay. So we subtracted that out, the mysterious line 50, to get to the 241. Okay. Guys, on slide 26, I gave you an example from Knight Newhouse of William and Mary, which that school in Williamsburg that no longer has wrestling, which a couple of us here went to. Okay. If they include line 50, they would have lost $18.55 million. Okay. In reality, they lost $170,000. If William and Mary would have lost 18.55 million, okay, I would have heard from so many people and they'd be out of business. They wouldn't have anybody to write those checks because their total revenue for the year was 36 million. Okay. So they wouldn't be able to raise another 50%. Okay. All right.
All right, so
Now,
let's stop. So let me wrap my head around this. So
certainly, Jason.
what when you're saying they would have lost this much, but in actuality they lost this much. Let's just put some layman's terms on this. I'm struggling to understand excess transfers back. Maybe somebody else is as well. So let's look at William and Mary here because we have tangible numbers here. So their financials based on this the MFRS statement. Okay, they lost how much money? On the books.
170,000.
Okay.
Oh, on the books, 18.55 million.
Okay, so why would a school want to report an $18 million loss versus a $170,000 loss?
Jason, I have no idea.
Okay.
And
I mean, that's
Then I'm
one of
not
the
as
things we wanna
confused as
figure
I
out
thought
at
I
the,
would be.
yeah, I spent a good part of this past month on this topic alone. Okay, because as soon as I saw these numbers, I said they can't be right. Because one of the things a statistician does, if you do something, does this look normal? Does this look okay? The answer here was no. Okay, so
Because at the end of the year, being nonprofit, it's funny because you see when you look at, I've pulled some of these statements, the FYRs, the fiscal year reports. I've pulled FOIA requests for several schools in the past. Most recently, that school in Norfolk, and looking at, it's like, okay, revenues, the expenses and revenues just perfectly always line up at zero. When I'm like, no, that's just no, it's crap.
yeah, nothing ever perfectly lines up at zero, right?
No, when I say crap, I don't mean crap like caca poo poo. I mean, crap in your accounting principle here.
Cleverly rigged accounting practices.
Yeah. So anyway, so again, so William and Mary, they're reporting. This is the reported loss.
Yeah.
I struggle. Why would somebody say we lost $18 million?
Jason,
And it'd be okay.
There has to be some reason for this, and that's why I'd really like to talk to somebody, a number cruncher from the NCAA, and explain this to me.
Explain line 50, excess transfers back.
Because think about it, if
is that uniform for every school? Every public school has this on their line.
Bingo.
This is line 50 on every one of them.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Moving forward.
Now they have different numbers, of course, on there. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So, once again, only public schools release this data. So what I was doing here on slide 28 is to do it. This slide 28 shows you, okay, how many public and private schools there are in FBS, FCS, no football, which you might just see that abbreviated to NF in future slides, and then the total D1. And you can see in this, as the bigger level of football, the more likely the schools are to be public. 87% are public, 13 private. When you go to no football, it's only 43% public, 50% private. Okay. And overall in Division I, 2/3 of the schools are public. Now, the average public school in the NCAA, because we saw how much money they lost total in the thing. So let's break it down. The average public school loses a little over $1 million a year once we remove that dubious line 50. Okay? Now, what's surprising here, guys, to some maybe, the bigger the school, the more money they're losing. Okay? The FBF loses 1.48 million. The FCS, 810,000. The no football, 250,000, which William Mary was in actually one of the more financially prudent FCS schools. Okay. Okay. Now, in 23-24, the combined FBS public schools, okay, the big boys lost $167 million. And you look at the conferences here. The SEC made 49. The Big Ten lost $78 million. Okay? So we're going to get to this more in episode 2 and 3, part 2 and 3. Okay.
And one thing
Even-
to consider too, also, if you're watching and you see Power 5 listed, we know the Pac-12 no longer considered a Power 5 conference, but at the time, these numbers, you're looking at the 23-24 numbers. Usually they run a year behind. That's what we're looking at. So now you're hearing Power 4 group of, the autonomous 4 with P4, whatever you want to call it. But at the time, the Pac-12 was a Power 5 school before the breakup of a Power 5 conference, before the breakup of what happened last year and leaving Washington State and Oregon State as the last two P5-ish members. So just to clarify on the terminology there.
Yep.
And Gorms,
Thank you.
And Gorms, these numbers are after removing line 50, correct?
Everything you see now is real numbers. It's removing line 50, or as real the numbers as you get from a school that might use line 50. Okay. Now.
Oh yeah, and line 50, that's not necessarily a loss all the time either, right? Sometimes that's a positive. You're like, oh well, we need to show we didn't make as much money. So is that ebb and flow? Or is it almost always negative?
If somebody did have a profit before line 50, you could add that in there. You might have a loss afterwards. Yes. So some of the schools that are reporting a loss with line 50 could have a profit without it. Yes, Jason.
Okay. Gotcha.
Like, for example, the SEC, if you count line 50, the conference has a loss. Okay.
Got it.
But in reality, it's 4. Now, what I did here then, I ran a coefficient between the conferences, the revenues, and the profits. There's no correlation. So just because you're a big boy like the SEC or the Big Ten doesn't mean you're any more likely or less likely to have a profit than the Sun Belt, the MAC, or anything like that, okay, in the FBS level. That's an interesting thing for people to realize that, and as you saw on the last slide, the Big Ten as a conference adding we couldn't add Northwestern in on there. So the other 13 schools, or Vanderbilt and the SEC, the other 13 at that time. So don't think all the big boys are making money, because there's no reason to think they are. Okay, now, Power 5 schools lost a total of $103 million. Group of 5 schools lost a total of $65 million. Okay, slide 32 shows you the breakdown between the revenues and the expenses. And, it's a surprise to many people that the Power 5, as Jason said, now it's the Power 4, have lost more money than the Group of 5 schools. Okay?
Well, then some of those P4 schools have to have that. I don't know if you the college football podcast with Pat Forty, Dan Wetzel, Ross Dellinger, they went and broke down line by line the recruiting of Arch Manning to Texas and how much money that was spent on one player, and that's the budget. That's in the football budget. That's not like outside donor money, being thrown at a recruit. This is not this is not an NIL thing. The amount of money spent on the steakhouse visit, it was absurd. Yep. Anyway, but football's king in Texas. We're not going to change anybody's mind that football is spending too much in Texas. So let's get that out of our heads right now. That's not going to happen.
Yep. So anyway, the Power 5 schools per school lost $1.84 million, and the Group of 5 schools $1.18 million. Okay.
Per school.
Yep, per school. All right. So all that glitters is not gold here, guys. Okay.
Is that an outsider's reference?
Yes, that's an outsider's reference.
It is.
Yeah.
Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold. Anyway.
We watch sold-out football games on stadiums, on TV, whatever, March Madness, and we think it's a gold mine in college sports. It's not a reality, guys, as far as a profit or loss type situation is. Okay. Now, if you go to the next slide, we show a profit margin, okay, for Fortune 500 companies, because the FBS athletic departments would be 419 on Fortune 500, okay, on slide 36. Okay, I'll get back to 35 in a second. On slide 36, okay, if it was based on their revenue. Okay. So the profit margin is horrible at these schools, even the top 13 revenue schools. Now, if we go back to slide 35 and talk about the top 13 schools with revenues, the reason I made the cutoff at 13 is because there were 13 schools with over $200 million in revenues. Okay. In case anybody's wondering, Auburn was 14th, a little bit short of it. Now, Jason mentioned about the recruitment of Arch Manning. Texas's revenues are $332 million. Okay. However, their expenses are $328 million. They made $4 million. Okay, on that kind of revenue. And you can see the schools in the parentheses. The Ohio State lost 40 million. Alabama, that team from Tuscaloosa, lost 25 million. LSU, Oklahoma, and Michigan all lost a small amount of money. Okay, if these schools can't make it, they either spend money like drunken sailors or they really got to figure something out because new expenses are coming down the road and it is trouble in this thing, guys. Okay. So, in other words, the top 13 schools combined made $4.2 million per school.
And take into consideration how many football playing FBS schools we have, that's again, we talk about uneven playing fields. That's the little guy. That's the little percentage that actually is making money on their athletics programs in terms of that revenue. Now, not looking at where a lot of these schools are making money is the tuition dollars that these students in non-revenue sports are bringing in for the school, not the athletic part of that CRAP accounting. Whereas in Division II, Division III, and NAIA, they count to your bottom line. For some reason in Division I, they just ignore that particular revenue stream. That drives me crazy. Anyway, 37.
Okay.
Moving forward.
All right. So anyway, the top 13 schools are on a precipice before rev shares and the early days of the NIL. Okay. Now, if we go to slide 38, I'll give you another example here. And I
noticed this on slide 35 or 36, where we're at with Texas A&M. I was like, wait, that's a lot, but there's more.
Yes, there's more on this. Okay, what Texas A&M did when they bought out Jimbo Fisher for $77 million not to come to work. Okay, Gormley could say this for Jason Hazard: if somebody wants to pay us $77 million, we will not come to work. We'll still go to the convention for fun, but we're not going to work at it. Okay.
I'll sit here and play darts in my speakeasy all day and vacuum and pick up the kids from camp. Yeah. I'll do all the honeydews, all of them.
Yeah, no problem.
I will be a house husband.
So Texas A&M raised money to buy out Jimbo Fisher, but they deferred the expenses. They only put $27 million of it on their 24 financials. So they don't have to pay it all out till 31. When in GAAP, the accrual system, you're supposed to match the same period, the expense and the revenue. Okay, so that's just a little trickeration they use down there at College Station. Okay, slide 39. Okay, the SEC is one of these conferences, first of all, that only has 2 wrestling programs, that is trying to expand, and everyone thinks the SEC has the answers. Okay, if you look at slide 39, you can see in the last 6 years, the profits have gone from 118 million steadily down to 49 million. And also what's increased is the institutional and student fees that do count as a revenue on these income statements. Okay, so they're increasing their revenue from that, but still losing, but their profits are going down because their expenses are going up. And Greg Sankey, if you need a guy to help you out with stats on this, I'm available.
Also, and this is something we're going to kick the can on this topic, but so when we've got the $20 million with the House settlement looming, Glenn's gonna bring it up throughout the course of the series. But now the rise in more money that's going to be paid out to players in select amount of sports is Oddly coinciding, Glenn, that might be something. How many schools opt in versus how many are raising tuition and student fees? Because we're seeing here in Minnesota, they raised the tuition for in-state students and out-of-state students. Oddly enough, the same year they're going to have to start paying out, the rev share. So, coincidence? Seems like there might
I
be
think
a
not.
statistical correlation there. Something for a future part of the series.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so now we've been looking at the revenues. Now we talked about them, but where do they come from, and what about Knight Newhouse? Can we talk about what you got from them to help us find these solutions?
Yes. Knight Newhouse gets these numbers from the MFRS report from the NCAA. And what this is, it's all the revenues. We have it broken down in dollar amounts and percentage of their total revenues. Okay. And all the revenue categories, we're going to be going over them one by one. Okay. But on slide 41, you see it as a percentage of the total revenues. And slide 42, you see the actual dollar amounts for all. And these are in millions of dollars, guys. So you can see the magnitude of the FBS with 11.8 billion in revenues and non-football with 917 million. Okay, there's a huge difference in these things. Okay. We will start with conference / NCAA and media rights. This is essentially, you see the Vols beat Bama on TV on the third Saturday in October. It's the amount of money the schools get from that, or you see March Madness, the amount of money the schools get for being on these things. Okay. This is 28% of the revenues for FBS schools, only 6% for FCS, and only 5% for non-football. Because let's face it, guys, the bigger schools are on TV more than the smaller ones are. Okay. So the next highest one is donations. Okay. 23% of the donations are the revenues from FBS schools, 8 and 8 for FCS, and no football. And a lot of the reason for this, guys, is the bigger schools like the Notre Dames of the world have huge alumni bases that never went to school there, that root for Notre Dame because that's their thing, okay, and give the Irish money.
What's the term I think they use at Michigan? I think they call those, like for Michigan, they call them Walmart Wolverines, I think is the term that gets used.
Subway alumni is Notre Dame.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the other term I was thinking about. And again, I go back to some of my friends that worked at some of these schools. Like I wear an Auburn shirt because I went to Auburn. You wear an Alabama shirt because you went to Walmart. You can also, those type of things. It's like, where'd you go? I went to I went to Eastern Michigan, but you're wearing a Michigan shirt. Because Ypsilanti's a hop, skip, and a jump from Ann Arbor. So I mean that's what and again, also now let's take the not the Walmart one. Let's put some actual credit to the university. And when Stanford was cutting all those sports, and then that school in Norfolk were dropping all those sports, the difference of the alumni base. Stanford has Fortune 50 alumni, venture capital CEOs. They have like that old money legacies going through, whereas you've got business owners at that school in Norfolk that have they make 7-8 figures, but that they're not dropping $100 million for a library and a hockey stadium be named after them, for example. So there's levels to the alumni at Division I schools, and those big schools that have those big research, and then they've got that Fortune 50, the Fortune 500. They just happen to be an Alabama football fan. So guess who benefits from the discretionary income of some of these folks too? That doesn't happen at Troy. That doesn't happen at schools like at Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, correct.
Moving forward,
but it can happen at Penn. They just got what did they just get dropped?
20
million for
30
wrestling.
million?
20 million.
Yeah.
All right. So the next category is ticket sales. Ticket sales are 16% for FBS of the revenues, 5% for FCS, and 3% for no football. Now, it's going to be very difficult for these big FBS conferences to raise their percentage or raise more revenue from football ticket sales. Why do you say that? Well, on slide 46, it shows you the Big Ten sold 94% of all their football tickets in 2024. Good for them. Okay. So they really
Outlier,
can't.
and one thing I want to point out too, down at the bottom, Northwestern. Be like, wait, what? Northwestern's in the middle of renovating their stadium, so they're playing like basically like a glitzed up soccer field right on Lake Michigan. So they are
Correct.
not in their old stadium. I
Ryan
mean,
Stadium, I
the
think
cool
it is.
Ryan Field, like I mean, it's cool looking, but it's got that old school architecture to it. But it's currently unplayable at the moment.
Yeah. And the other outlier is UCLA only selling 52% of their football tickets. Okay.
Because it's in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
It's a gigantic
Okay.
stadium.
Yep. Okay. Other revenue is compensation and benefits provided by third party, like game programs, concessions, parking, camps, stuff like that. That is 8% for FBS, 5 for FCS, and 4 for no football. It's really going to be hard to raise money here because how many times can you hit the same person up? I mean, how many times can you hit me up when I'm going to a football game and I'm already paying bigger money for the tickets with a talent fee included in on that to go to RevShare? And then, how much you're going to get for a bottled water and a hot dog, right? Okay. So,
Unless
then
you're
the next
Coastal
one-
Carolina, Coastal's making them free. Anyway,
Yes.
I'd be curious
I
on how
saw
that's
that.
going to work.
Yeah. Okay. So slide 48 shows corporate ads. They're 8% of revenue for the big schools, 3% for FCS, 3% for no football. And it's going to really be difficult getting more corporate ads because a lot of these corporations are going to give the money directly to a player in the form of an NIL deal. So once again, how many times can you squeeze that juice out of the same lemon? Okay. The away competition guarantees are only amount to 1% for FBS, 4% for FCS, and 5% for non-football. In case you're wondering what this is, there's a reason Troy State plays Bama, etc., is to get a big paycheck from the big school and go there and get whooped. Okay.
And Glenn, through the research, this is one that people say, well, those games are how these smaller programs like fund their departments. Not necessarily. You hear about the big ones. You hear about the big check because how much is Bethune-Cookman going to get to play at Florida State? I mean, it's like when you're bringing like Delaware State famously. I believe Delaware State forfeited a conference game in the MEAC. It could have been North Carolina A&T. I think it was Delaware State a couple years ago to play at Michigan. They forfeited a conference game to take a bye game and got beat like 63-3. So those are the outliers to these guarantee. A lot of these guarantee games aren't in the six figures. They're going to cover your travel.
Oh yeah.
So again, it's that outlier. It's the big one that you hear about. Why is it 84-0? Why is Savannah State playing Georgia? Like those type of games are those outlier big numbers. That is far more common to see the 50 to 75,000. Okay, we'll pay your travel and here's your guarantee. So
Yeah.
Again, those big, getting paid $500,000, $600,000, $700,000,
Yeah.
so you can fill up,
And it's
what is it?
wild
Whatever.
because, you hear people say all the time, like, well, why would I want to watch this game? Well, you're only going to watch one game at a time anyway. So, and a lot of these big schools are selling out their football stadiums, whether we play Kent State or Georgia at home. We sell out.
That's the reason. That's what you need, an extra Saturday home game.
Yeah. And then Kent State gets a big paycheck. Okay. All right. What is institutional support? The definition of institutional support is revenue received from governments, direct funds from the institution for athletics operation, and costs covered and services provided by the institution to athletics, but not. Okay. So the explanation is this: is several categories are added together to provide information about revenue that is allocated to athletes. This revenue is not generated by athletics.
Whose definition is that?
This is the definition on the new market, the Knight Newhouse
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I
I'm,
thought.
and it comes from also the NCAA MFRS report because they have to give definitions for the revenues so people are by and large filling them out relatively the same. Okay. So institutional support is 12% of FBS revenue, 46% of FCS, and 46% of no football. When colleges say, and they often do, that no state money is used for college athletics, it depends what your definition of is. Okay? I mean, it's it's really not a fully honest statement. Okay? So, next, student fees. Okay. Student
This is a
fees.
trigger one for colleges in Virginia because the Cox bill came in, and that is one where some schools are pointing to, well, that's the reason we had to do this. That's the reason we had to do that. So look up the Cox bill in Virginia, which
Yeah, well,
was
Virginia.
supposed to limit the amount athletics could use for student fees. Yet the alma mater of the guy who crafted it is still isn't in line with the Cox bill. Go figure.
Yeah. Okay. So it's only 4% for FBS schools, but 23% for FCS and 30 for no football. I remember when I was helping out at William and Mary, the student fees were like 3/4 of all the revenue. Okay. And then they just couldn't continue to raise them and stuff like that. And it really put us in a bind. Okay. And as Jason mentioned, the Cox Bill of Virginia has limited that. So these schools are in big trouble if they're opting in to rev share and all that stuff because they really can't find a lot more places for revenue. Okay. The huge percentage of from institutional support student fees are 70% and 76% for FCS and non-football. Okay. I don't know what to tell you. Those schools are in trouble to begin with. Okay. Before all this happens. Slide 54.
All right. So we've been talking about it, and it does seem a little concerning when you look at it. What was your biggest concern when you looked at the revenue side of the financials?
It's a huge percentage from institutional support and student fees. As a matter of fact, the schools that get the most money in Division One from student fees are James Madison and that school in Norfolk. Okay, 55 million and 32 million respectively of their revenues come from their student fees. If there is a cap on this or they really can't get around it, I don't know how in the world they're going to deal with revenue share at James Madison because that becomes an expense.
And I wanted to bring this up. So there's the Triple Option podcast, which it was sent to me this week, and there was a line in there that used that school in Norfolk as an example, and it was Urban Meyer, who say what you want about Urban Meyer. Anyway, he points out about going to the NCAA convention, and it says looking around, and why is the commissioner of the Sun Belt and this associate AD from Old Dominion in the conversation? And the reason was like they're not driving the boat. They're not making any decisions. Like they're not like institutions. Ohio State and that school, and let's use Troy instead of ye old alma mater. They're not the same. They're not. They're never going to be the same. And the fact that some of these G5 athletic departments feel like they need that. I think fairness, yeah, if you're going to play in a playoff, well, one, the playoff system in FBS is ridiculous. If every other level of college football can figure it out and they can't, it's ridiculously stupid. So that's the common sense thing, but they're not the same. Then, like institutions have like problems. These smaller institutions now are creating more problems trying to be like the Ohio States of the world. So, and again, the point that that Urban Meyer had made was like it's bad leadership that's driving the boat at these schools. So it was an interesting conversation. So go find it, the Triple Option. I was going to try to play it here on this episode. It's about 42 minutes in. I've got it clipped on YouTube, so I'll look for it there. So the Triple Option, it was Urban Meyer was talking about the 2006, I think, Rose Bowl game I think it was, but it was 42 minutes in. Mac Brown's on that episode, Vince Young. So that'll help you find it. But that was like, it was like a 1 minute clip. I'm like, yeah. And I normally don't agree with, a lot of what the P5 says about college sports, because they don't live in a reality of how 90% of college athletes exist, which is poor and using, coffee filters for toilet paper in some cases. Sorry for the visual, but I thought that information was quite pertinent and relevant coming from a guy that, yeah, guess what? You're not like us. Stop trying to be. You're just creating more problems for your own. So anyway, that's more choir preaching type of thing going on.
And then slide 56 is a repeat of one we showed earlier, and what it shows is the combination of institutional support and student fees, the percentage of the revenues from the following categories: FBS, FCS, though football in total. That, Kevin, to answer your question, is the biggest concern of what's going on. If you look at the FBS schools, okay, once again, the Big 12's the Pac-12's not in this anymore, but in the past they were. On slide 57, you can see the percent of those conferences. And as Jason mentioned, those schools in the group of five, they're not the same as the schools in the Power Five. And a lot of those schools in the Power Five are not the same as each other. Okay. So,
and again, let's go back to the Walmart Wolverine thing. Where is your Eastern Michigan alum more likely to go? A football game at the Ashtray that they call the Factory, or the Big House? It's college football fandom is driving this, okay? No matter how much you want your school to be on par with the big boys, it's not going to be, because as much as we hate to say this, it's capitalism. It's the demand for big time college football. I say this all the time. I love college football, but I hate college football because I love other college sports. I love Olympic sports. So that's what drives it. We can tell this to the biggest college football fan in the world. It's not going to change their opinion. They're still going to watch Bama, South Carolina. They're still going to watch Florida, Georgia. They're still going to watch A&M in Texas. They're still going to be watching the Hawaii game so they can bet something at FanDuel at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, that's going to happen. You're not going to change the opinion of that sports fan. The issue, what we're trying to do is educate everybody. It's like, look, it's just because you're bringing in a ton of money doesn't mean you're making a lot of money. At the end of the day, your wallet's still kind of empty, right? So that's the impetus. We're not taking shots at football for being the culprit, even though it's the bad leadership with football that's really spiraling all of this downhill. And we're collateral damage. Gymnastics is collateral damage. Volleyball, track and field, tennis is getting decimated. So another soapbox moment, Glenn. Sorry, continue.
That's okay.
And it's gonna get worse.
Yep.
It'll get worse in Division I. I think Division II, Division III, and the NAIA are just going to still continue. They're going to keep the schools that they're going to reap the benefits from the DSAs when they time out, designated student athletes with the roster caps. They got to go somewhere. They're going to end up trickling down. So we may see more small programs added on this, but again, small programs don't move the needle as valuable as Grandview and Wartburg are to the landscape of college wrestling and the high school coaching in the state of Iowa. Let's use Iowa for an example. That it doesn't move the needle. The fan at the NCAA Division I tournament really doesn't care about them. Just like the college football fan that's watching SEC Saturdays doesn't care about Troy and Louisiana Tech. They just don't.
Yep, granted. Okay, to sum up the revenue side of things, I have one piece of advice for everybody. Colleges, do not use the same methods that DeLorean used to finance his car enterprise. Okay, you got to find revenue from somewhere, but that was not a good idea. Okay, slide 59.
All right, so we talked about the revenues. Now let's talk a little bit about expenses. Where does the money expenses go for these NCAA D1 schools?
Okay, we did the same thing on slide 60 and 61 where we show the percentages and then the total dollars spent, okay, on all the different expenses. Now, if people asking the facilities and debt is a different line entry than the debt in slide 45, okay, there are two different categories here, ever. Okay, it's a confusing topic and stuff like that. I don't want to drag it out, but the debt there is not necessarily the debt that should be a balance sheet instead of an income statement. So okay. It's just this are the expenses that are on there. Okay. Slide 63. Instead of going over each expense line by line like we did on the revenues, it's going to be harder to do it. Cutting expenses to balancing a budget can be one of the most difficult things to do in governments. And college, if they're public schools, they're government affiliated. Okay. The Ohio State, that means the state of Ohio owns them. Okay. We did a case study in grad school. It was an interactive seminar. This is way back when. And let's just say Gormley, Bryant, and Hazard had to figure out how we're going to cut the balance the federal budget, and the rest of the class made arguments on why it wouldn't work. And we'd say one thing, and somebody would say, well, no, I'm from Kansas, and we need that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, there's a reason why we haven't had a balanced budget since Eisenhower, okay? And there is a reason we haven't had no debt since Andrew Jackson, okay? Because it's almost impossible for governments to balance their budgets, okay? Now, if you really want to have fun, go through this with somebody at a bar one night or drinking some beers and see what you want to cut, okay? This is going to turn into a bad situation at every college. When they were dropping William Mary Wrestling, no other coaches helped us out or nobody else in the department. It was wrestlers versus the world because the other coaches wanted their teams to stay and the other staff members on the athletic department wanted to keep their jobs.
Yeah, it's one thing I always wondered why back in the day, why would I always wondered before women's wrestling was a thing, and that was sadly that was been a thing for that wasn't a thing for too long. We look at why wouldn't the wrestlers at this school, team up with this women's sport from this school to work together? It's just no. It's like it really becomes, protect your own, like you said, CYA. And that can mean a couple different things to a couple different people, but that's at the bottom line. You're going to look out for number one, or else you're going to end up stepping in number two, to quote the great poet laureate Rodney Dangerfield. It's like you've got, stay out of the firing line. Like, oh, they're cutting wrestling. We're getting away from it. It's like you are the scarlet letter immediately. I'm throwing all sorts of movie references at you and literary references. Wow, I've thrown the scarlet letter and an Outsiders references here. So you're just bad bill of goods as soon as nobody wants to help you. So I guess that's how you're explaining it in William and Mary, right, Glenn?
Yeah, it's exactly how I'm explaining it. I mean, nobody wanted to be around me and Pincus when they were dropping us. But let's face it, if they were dropping somebody else and the wrestling team was saved, me and Pincus want to help them out. I mean,
I'll look at it, and I'll bring this up because I get in arguments all the time with the fan base from ye old alma mater, and the phallus, the farce that was Dr. Richard Sanders' report on the consulting that he did as a member of East Tennessee State University's faculty. Now was their AD shortly thereafter, paying one school to tell another school what to cut. And then it was framed that it had to be, somebody has to be gone. So they framed it, it's men's soccer, baseball, or wrestling. Well, it was a complete, no, you didn't have to cut anything. That's what you sold to that's how this consulting thing was put. And so you've got the baseball fan base attacking, we're fighting back. It's like, and they're like, well, sorry, get over it. Well, we had to cut something. You're not going to cut the more popular sports. That's what they wanted us to do, is start infight, put it against sport versus sport when it was bad leadership against everybody else. Now they're seeing the bad leadership and they're starting to come around, but oh, well, you were kind of right. So putting the teams' fan bases against each other is a calculated move. So of course, the less popular sport in terms of the fan base, in terms of less popular sport in terms of TV dollars or potential to be on TV and potential revenue, they start getting turned on each other. And that's what happened in some small degree at that place in Norfolk. And I'm seeing it every time I sit there and I see what's going on when the coach at two of the Save Sports are buddy with said athletic directors. So, that's another thing. It's like, when they're going to find a way to get rid of you, they're going to find a way to get rid of you, and they're going to do everything they can to twist that knife and put you against each other. So that's one thing I learned from my own personal experiences is like, and then you become a pariah, you become persona non grata. They don't answer you. They stop answering wrestling questions. I'm cleaning out my office the other day. I contributed some money for the stadium renovation with the bricks, got my name on it. I put it on Facebook. What do I do with this brick? And I think every response was throw it through a window. And I'm not going to say of who. Not going to do that. I don't know where the brick went. Gave it to my wife to take care of. Whether or not I see it, it's another point. So that's what they do when they cut Glenn and Kevin's program, when they cut my program, when they cut programs, they're going to put the fan base against that program as well. It's a calculated move.
Agreed.
So be prepared for that. And guess what? If you're a baseball fan at X school, don't turn your back on that program and go, oh, sorry, it's not me. You have better resources pulling together and fighting a wrong for the greater good of your university versus, oh, no, we're going to cut our scholarships for a year. Oh, we can't cut our You know what? They don't care about you either. That's all I'm going to say. Sorry. So another soapbox moment over.
That was well said, Jason. All right, slide 65.
Was it? I
Bring
don't know.
us
I get
on
so
home.
fired up on this stuff.
All right. So, and just to preface on this, we talked about the college where it is right now, expenses and revenues, and I have to think I think we're very close to a repeat of what happened to college sports, with Title IX. We're getting the same kind of factors coming in, and it took a number of years for it to get shaken out. I think we're going to see the same thing now. It's going to take a while for this to shake out. Unintended consequences haven't even been seen yet. It's going to be at least 4 or 5 years before we really see the full influence of what just happened.
You brought up,
Right,
and you brought up Title IX, Kevin, too. And Glenn brought this up. And again, we're not going to talk. This is not about what happened with the safe harbor and the OCR's definition of that led to so many drops back in the late 80s, early 90s when safe harbor, especially around 92, became the buzzword. Oh, prong one, safe harbor. Okay. It became a math problem. Now we're looking at what's happened is, like, especially Division I, they've basically cut so many men's sports. You really can't cut anymore and blame Title IX. The law's 50 years old. Be like, you go, well, Title IX, that's on the books for 50 years. It is in every athletic director's directive as far as job responsibilities is Title IX compliance. So when you create a Title IX problem, that is you creating a failure. That is not the law's problem. That is not the law's. The law didn't tell you that run your athletic department so badly we need to cut a sport. We've hit that critical minimum. Like you can't cut anymore. There's no more to cut. The minimum at Division I is 6 men's sports. So what's going to happen? You're going to start seeing schools whittling down when wrestling was already cut. Tennis has already taken a hit. A lot of international students, we don't know what's going on there. So we're going to start seeing like you can't cut anymore. It's going to start coming from somewhere else. And it's going to start coming from those revenue sports, revenue, air quotes. It's going to start coming from baseball. It's going to start coming from track. It's like, oh, well, what else? We've got only these schools left. Now we're going to start cutting there. Arthur Bryant, the famed Title IX lawyer, he's back. He's got his own firm specific for Title IX now. You don't think they're going to go after this NIL and the payments is going to go this much to men's basketball and this little bit to women's basketball? We got more Title IX lawsuits coming, folks. And guess what? Wrestling's not going to get the slashy like we thought it did back in the 80s and 90s. It's going to slash from everybody's going to feel the slash now, and everybody's going to point that finger right at football, and they're going to be like, not my problem. So be prepared for that too.
Thank you.
All right, Kev notes.
Sorry, I'm on a rant today, man. I'm rant. It's just been rant episode. I didn't expect this.
Back
It's been
on
Glenn's
slide
show.
16.
Yeah.
And a little bit, I said it earlier, it's due to the confluence of many factors. The business of college sports is entering a turbulent and dangerous era, and we'll get more into that in the next 2 shows. Slide 21. Colleges don't follow GAAP, generally accepted accounting practice, so it's really hard to follow their profits and losses now and in the past. Number 3, colleges use the dubious, That should be probably capitalized expense category. Excess transfers back, which make their losses look worse than they really are. And if this bookkeeping trick's factored out, the $4.5 billion loss for all public schools, NCAA D1 public schools, became a more accurate $240 million loss. Still substantial, but not as debilitating. Number 4, the average athletic department in public colleges lost $1 million in 23-24. FBS lost 1.48, FCS lost 0.8, and non-football lost 0.25. 5, the 13 schools with 200 plus million in revenues had a profit margins of 1.8%. Fortune 500 average profit margin was 10%. So even the schools making huge revenue are nowhere near as profitable as they should be if they were run like a business.
Glenn, how long would the Greenleaf have been open if you ran that bar like some of these schools run their athletic department?
We'd be closed as soon as that one keg ran out. We wouldn't last a month. We wouldn't last a month.
Parking lot would still be terrible. Number 6.
Yes. Go ahead, Kevin.
All right, number 6. In slides 42 to 53, we explained why it was difficult to raise the revenues enough to offset future expenses. Again, we're going to talk about that in the next 2 shows. Number 7, all NCAA D1 public schools revenues from institutional support plus student fees are 29% of total revenues. For FCS and non-football, there's 70% and 76%. That's enormous. Number 8, slide 61 shows the staggering amount of money college athletic departments spend. They spend money like drunken sailors, but at least drunken sailors spend their own money. And we talked a little bit, I'm a little aside here. We talked to you, Glenn, you brought it up about Texas, or Jason did, spent on
Arch Manning.
On one recruit. And they made money. They probably would have made a lot more money if their recruiting budget wasn't so crazy. Number 62, slide 62, college athletic departments are about to be more than ever, head ducked in the sand and cover your A atmosphere. And number 10, in episode 46 and 47, MatStats will discuss other revenue share, roster caps, NIL, and other factors that are going to really rock the collegiate sports landscape.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin. I just want to say this. Our next episode comes out Wednesday, August 20th. It'll be, just like you guys all know this, part 2 on this, where we will discuss at length the rev share, the roster limits, and the NIL, and then we'll move to part 3 of the show. Anything you guys need to say, Jason and Kevin, before I wrap it up?
Yeah, part 2 will also be a celebration of my 46th birthday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'll be in Bulgaria, by the way, at the U20 World Championships. So we'll definitely be recording that one before I leave the country to add country number 32 to my list.
Yep.
As we record this, U17s are going on right now in Athens. So World Championship season.
All right, guys. And to all the viewers and the wrestling coaches, we look forward to seeing you guys at the convention here in a couple days. And until then, head up, elbows in.
Red alert.
See ya.